pair of investigative reports in the New York Times reveals stunning new details about what might be in the Jeffrey Epstein-related FBI materials that Donald Trump's most loyal followers have been clamoring for. It starts with one of the most comprehensive explorations on that topic to date, from a 15-year public friendship to their falling out in 2004 and all the way through to last week. Quote, there were lavish dinners with bold-faced names at Mr. Epstein's mansion on the Upper East Side and raucous parties with cheerleaders and models at Mr. Trump's private club and residence at Mar-a-Lago. In between, there were trips back and forth from Florida to New York on one of Mr. Epstein's private jets. In a separate piece of reporting, the New York Times presents the experience of one Epstein accuser in particular, Maria Farmer, whose story, the Times says, suggests how Trump might appear in the Epstein files. It has to do with an encounter Farmer says happened in 1995 as she was preparing to work for Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, she said she told the authorities that late one night, Mr. Epstein unexpectedly called her to his offices in a luxury building in Manhattan, and she arrived in running shorts. Mr. Trump then arrived wearing a business suit and started to hover over her, she said she told the authorities. Ms. Farmer said she recalled feeling scared as Mr. Trump stared at her bare legs. Then Mr. Epstein entered the room, and she recalled him saying to Mr. Trump, quote, no, no, she's not here for you, end quote. The two men left the room, and Ms. Farmer said she could hear Mr. Trump commenting that he thought Ms. Farmer was 16 years old. Farmer made clear to the New York Times that although she told the FBI about this incident in 1996 and again in 2006, there were no further alarming interactions with Donald Trump, and she didn't see him engage in inappropriate conduct with girls or women. Furthermore, we should note Trump has never been charged or accused of wrongdoing in connection with Jeffrey Epstein. He's gone so far as to suggest that he had no idea his old acquaintance was abusing young women. In a statement provided to the New York Times, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt insists that Donald Trump had barred Mr. Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago club, quote, for being a creep. These stories are tired and pathetic attempts to distract from all the success of President Trump's administration, end quote. Okay, that's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. New York Times investigative reporter Mike Schmidt is here. He is byline on that piece of reporting we were just reading from. Also joining us is former lead investigator for the January 6th Select Committee, Tim Hafey. And with us for the hour, MSNBC political analyst, host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller's here. Mike Schmidt, take me through what you and your colleague reported about the FBI's knowledge of, at least from one witness, Donald Trump's interactions with Jeffrey Epstein.
Look, in the course of a several decades-long Justice Department investigation, investigators are going to soak up all different sorts of tips, details, leads, and such. In the course of that, as this one woman tells her story, she's telling us that she told the FBI about an interaction she had with Trump and Epstein. And the significance of it is that that is just the type of detail that Trump's allies and supporters have been clamoring for. They want the Epstein files. They want to know who was close to Epstein, who he was talking to, who he was doing business with. Anyone who was connected to him, they believe, should see the light of day. And Donald Trump, being someone who's obviously very powerful and important, would sort of fit into what the supporters would want, because what the supporters would want to know is who was in the orbit of Epstein. And what we're trying to say in this story is that although we cannot see into all of the Justice Department files, and we don't know everything that is in them, or even if this woman's account of her interaction with Trump is there, this is the type of thing that could be buried in the documents that would be unflattering for Trump, because Trump would have to explain, well, why were you with Jeffrey Epstein? Why were you with him in this room with this woman? Like, what is that all about? And it makes it more difficult for him to put distance between him and himself. But at the heart of this story is the idea that this is the type of thing that investigations soak up. A very small percentage of the evidence investigators collect ultimately goes, in an indictment or is used at a trial where a judge oversees, how it can be cross-examined. And this is the type of detail that could be damaging. That could potentially be in the documents.
Mike Schmidt, just tell us a little bit more about Ms. Farmer and her sister and how they figured into the Epstein investigation, because victims seem to be absent reporting like yours, somewhat voiceless and potentially re-traumatized by all of this.
Well, in 2019, my colleague Mike Baker reported on these two sisters and about how one of them in 1995 called the NYPD to essentially report Epstein and Maxwell to the authorities. And the significance of that is that this is one of the, if not the first call to law enforcement, the first time that someone reported Epstein to folks who could hold him accountable criminally. According to their account, the NYPD told them to reach out to the FBI. They reached out to the FBI. About a decade later, they were interviewed again by the FBI. It was in those two different interactions with the FBI that one of the sisters says that she told them about the interactions that she had with Trump and how there were very powerful people who Epstein had ties to, and that was something that she thought the authorities should look into. She didn't have evidence that Donald Trump or any of the other powerful folks had committed criminal wrongdoing, but she's basically saying, look, there's this guy who's doing these things that are wrong, and he's associated with people who are very powerful, including Bill Clinton. The
Recent investigative reports by the New York Times have shed new light on the complex relationship between President Donald Trump and the late Jeffrey Epstein, fueling speculation about what might be contained in the long-sought Epstein files. The reports detail a 15-year association between the two men, from lavish dinners at Epstein's Upper East Side mansion to raucous parties at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club, marked by frequent trips on Epstein's private jet. Their friendship, which began in the late 1980s, ended in a falling out in 2004, reportedly after Trump barred Epstein from Mar-a-Lago for inappropriate behavior. These revelations come as Trump's allies, including figures like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, demand the release of Epstein's FBI files, believing they could expose powerful individuals connected to the disgraced financier. A key focus of the reporting is the account of Maria Farmer, an Epstein accuser who claims she had an unsettling encounter with Trump in 1995. Farmer told The Times she was called to Epstein's Manhattan office late one night, arriving in running shorts. She alleges Trump arrived, stared at her bare legs, and made her feel uncomfortable, with Epstein intervening to say, No, she's not here for you." Farmer claims she overheard Trump remark that he thought she was 16 years old. She reported this incident to the FBI in 1996 and again in 2006, though she emphasized that she witnessed no inappropriate conduct by Trump toward girls or women beyond this encounter. Importantly, Trump has never been charged or accused of wrongdoing in connection with Epstein, and White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt dismissed the reports as tired and pathetic attempts to undermine Trump's administration. The Times reporting underscores the broader context of the Epstein investigation, which spanned decades and collected vast amounts of information, only a fraction of which was used in criminal proceedings against Epstein or his associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Farmer's account, for instance, illustrates the type of detail that could be buried in the FBI's files, potentially unflattering to Trump but not necessarily indicative of criminality. Such details, investigators note, are typical in sprawling probes, where tips and allegations are sifted for relevance and reliability. The push for transparency, amplified by figures like Elon Musk, who tweeted that Trump appears in the Epstein files, has intensified public curiosity about what remains undisclosed. However, experts caution that much of the information in these files may lack corroboration or fail to meet evidentiary standards for legal action. Farmer's story also highlights the challenges faced by Epstein's victims, who often feel voiceless amid high-profile reporting. In 2019, The Times reported on Farmer and her sister, who in 1995 contacted the NYPD to report Epstein and Maxwell, marking one of the earliest known complaints to law enforcement. The NYPD directed them to the FBI, but no immediate action followed. The sisters' accounts, including mentions of Epstein's ties to powerful figures like Trump and Bill Clinton, underscore the difficulty of holding influential individuals accountable. Legal experts suggest that the Epstein files likely contain a mix of credible leads and unverified claims, with only a small portion relevant to criminal indictments. The current debate, fueled by Trump's supporters and critics alike, centers on whether these files could reveal compromising details about prominent figures. For Trump, the association with Epstein raises questions about his judgment and past social circles, even as his administration denies any impropriety. As the public awaits potential disclosures, the reports serve as a reminder of the complexities of investigating powerful networks and the enduring impact on victims seeking justice. The full scope of the Epstein files remains uncertain, leaving room for speculation and scrutiny in equal measure.